Hey, it's Obi Chukwumah of Space Equity, where we're all about increasing assets and creating new space. Here to talk to you some more about getting this money so you can start your franchise or your business in general. We are driving in North Carolina, driving with my 16-year-old daughter, who told me I need to stop mansplaining stuff to her. We were arguing about Ali Wong and her leadership or lack of leadership. She's a leader. The definition of a leadership, and I'm just tired, y'all. I'm trying to get to North Carolina, but let's talk about these SBA finance and why we did it. So as you know in our previous videos, where you can click to the video to the left to get a recap on it, we talked about the SBA loan process. I never really said why. The reason for the SBA, they're designed for entrepreneurs and startups like ours. They help mitigate a capital shortfall. What do I mean by that? If we got traditional financing, or you got traditional financing, first you got to find a bank that likes this space, quick service restaurants, and they usually like it if you have 30+% down. Well, on a $1.5 million transaction, 30% is a lot of money because you got outside stuff outside of just your down payment. So we decided to use the SBA. We finally settled on the SBA 504 with Capital CDC because we could do that with 15% down. And then if we do our next one, we can do it with 10% down because we'll have some more experience. They're like, hey, you're a startup, you put 15% down. And they were allowed to go up to $5 million worth of SBA debt. So we have the capacity on our next transaction and even the third one to use the SBA. But that is not the only way to skin a cat. SBA gets you in there. It is the least amount of money you have to put up for a transaction, but there's a lot of strings attached. So rather than just throw all these terms out, let's make some definitions. We understand what we're talking about. So the first thing I want to define is personal capital. This is your money. This could be your money from your 401k. This is your money from your savings, your checking account. This is your money from your home equity line of credit that you've built some equity over the past 3 years and you have the capacity to tap into. This is your money that you put into the project, and this is your quote unquote skin in the game, your personal capital. We can have a whole nother discussion on the 401k. Remember, when you tap into that, that could be a tax event. I say it could be because you could change your 401k into a self-directed IRA, then all of a sudden it's your capital to use as you please, but it has to stay within this vein. So there are ways to get around it, but just know if you just go and get that money from your 401k, you got to pay taxes on that thing. So I am not your financial advisor, but I would say be aware of what happens when you tap into certain tools, your capital. That's the personal capital. There's the investor capital. So we talked about Don Peoples, and he had the video out there saying $69 trillion was circulated in this private equity space.
There is $69 trillion currently invested in venture capital and private equity. $69 trillion. Now, Biden spent less than $2 trillion to try to save the country for COVID and build back from the recession and all that. And $69 trillion in that two sectors. Now, of that $69 trillion, less than 1.3% is invested in firms founded, run, or owned by women and people of color combined.
People that have money, they use their money to make money. They don't just sit around and hide it under the mattress or leave it in a checking account, giving them no return. They deploy it in insurance vehicles. They deploy it towards entrepreneurial projects, that investor capital, and then they have projects that they like. So there's probably money tied to the work that you're doing. We are doing a quick service restaurant, and we happen to find a private equity group that has a vertical trying to give money for quick service restaurants. So you have the definition of personal capital, you got the definition of private equity. This is a pool of money, whether it be through a family office. A family office is, I remember in 2016, I just moved to Dallas, was sitting in some commercial banker meetings, our C-suite at the regional level, and they kept on using the term the family office. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? I need to figure what that shit is, because I don't want to be the one that don't know. You know, black people, we don't want to ask questions when we think we should know something that we don't know. But if you don't know, you don't know. Just ask. Well, a family office is, let's say Edward Jones is not a family office. Edward Jones is an investment firm that takes your capital and invests it in the market for you through their professional service. They have to be qualified and licensed. A family office, they can have billions of dollars, but they're only investing their group's money. They're not necessarily taking on everybody in the market and advertising, hey, we're gonna trade your money and we're gonna grow your portfolio on behalf of like a Fidelity. So a family office may have billions of dollars, but they're not taking on quote unquote public money. They're taking on a group of qualified investors' money, and then they're deploying that to the projects that they as a team decide to deploy. A family office. So private equity has a lot of family office money. There may be some very famous people or people you know, like let's say in the Dallas area, the family that owns the Chiefs, they have family office money that deploy projects to it. That's an example of a family office. Traditional way we know how to raise capital or debt is to borrow from the bank. So you borrow from the bank, the traditional bank, the conventional loan, you're gonna put 20, 30% down, but you're gonna get the most competitive pricing available. But it is also the most stringent way to get capital. Why is it stringent? Because their banks are regulated as they should be. So they have to hit certain requirements of, let's say that you've got at the state level, that the state auditors that make sure banks are not cheating the public, they have underwriting standards. At the federal level, you have some underwriting standards. So, and then you have, a bank can't just have all their money in one basket. They can't say, oh, all we're gonna do is real estate, or all we're gonna do is C&I. They have certain levels or caps that they have in certain spaces. With that, bank money is the cheapest money, but it's also the hardest money to get. And why do I say getting a loan is cheap? Because if you get a loan and you're paying 6%, it is cheaper than giving somebody 20% equity in a transaction. You do understand when you're giving somebody 20% equity, if y'all make $10, they make $2. If you have $10 borrowed, 6% of that $10, not is the interest that you pay. So bank is the cheapest money, but it's also the hardest money to get because of regulations, because of lack of knowledge of how the process works. It is a relationship game. So you may have a great idea, but you're not aligning that with somebody who has the capital for you. Now this money game, it's so easy, but it's so hard. It's easy because really there's somebody that has an appetite. There's some entity that has an appetite for what you're producing, for what you're creating. The hard part is aligning those appetites. So we have tried at our institution, we've tried and failed to raise capital in a lot of places. We've had success raising capital. We raised about $130,000 of capital from local relationships that we had. Then we, in our partnership with Fred, there's another 165 capital. So all in, our partner has nearly 200,000 in the transaction. My wife and I have over 200,000 in the transaction. And then we also raised about 130,000. This is how expensive it is to put these things together. That's why we have to raise money. On the private equity side, just know that there's some entity or institution wants to raise money in the space that you have, but you got to find those relationships and get there. It's taken us a while, and we haven't penned any deals, but we're on the right path, we believe, with a particular private equity firm that can help us scale. Meaning, when we signed a contract with Scooter's Coffee, we said that we're gonna do 5 stores in 5 years or less. Because of some technical stuff that actually my partner Fred is gonna get on the phone with Scooters Corporate, we have 4 stores because we picked a territory that you can only have one, blah, blah, blah. But we gotta do 5 stores in 5 years or less. If we don't do that, we are in breach of our contract. To do 5 stores in 5 years and you're in the startup phase, we definitely are gonna need capital outside of our own capital. So it's great to find a private equity that wants to do the quick service restaurant space with us. Let me recap, this is how money is created. We make money flipping coffee, selling coffee to people. The private equity that we are gonna potentially work with, they make their money finding tenants. We are a tenant. Because we are gonna flip coffee on a certain site, we would sign a 15-year lease to sell this coffee, $1 million worth of coffee a year, with margins around 20+%. So net operating income of $200,000 a year on one site. So for 15 years, as a result, we need that site to make this money. And there's somebody that needs a tenant that will pay a lease that all in triple net. By triple net, I mean the expenses of the rent and the expenses of the taxes, the insurance, and the common area maintenance. Somebody's gonna pay $100,000+ a year to make $1 million worth of coffee a year. And that person, we happen to be on our first site, we're the tenant and we're the landlord and we're the operator, right? But with our partnership in the private equity, they're looking for tenants to pay $100,000+ a year so they can sell that at a cap rate. Remember, we talked about what the cap rate looks like. We said, if I'm going to pay $130,000 a year in rent, including triple net, and the cap rate, cap stands for the amount of time it takes you to get the return on your investment. So if we're saying at a rate of 6.35% a year, off of $130,000 a rent, $130,600, that translates to about $2,057,000 of what they would pay so they can get that $130,000 a rent. So $2,057,000 to get $130,000 a year in rent. All right, now how does the private equity make their money? I am so glad you asked, how do they make their money? They make their money on the margin. So the private equity, they've raised money for this space. Let's say they raised, let's throw a number out there, $50 million. They're gonna put $50 million, and that $50 million, all the projects are quick service restaurants. Taco Bell, Starbucks, not Starbucks, Scooters Coffee, McDonald's, whatever they, Jack in the Box. They're going to find operators who are gonna pay a lease for 15 years. And when they do that, they raise money for that purpose. So they'll say to me, hey, you got this service agreement with your corporation to do 5 stores. We got some money for you to do that. In exchange, you're gonna pay a lease to the end user that we're gonna find, and we're gonna make our money on the delta. So we're gonna find somebody, sell it to them for $2 million so they can get $130,000 a year in rent. And it costs, let's say it costs you $1.5 million to put this up. We're gonna put that $1.5 million. We're gonna put $500,000 down, which is over 30% of the capital that we raised. And then we've got a partnership with a bank that is gonna give us great rates to help you with vertical construction. So they'll get a loan for $1 million. They have 500 in it. They have total cost of 1.5 million. They're going to sell it for 2 million. After expenses, they're going to net like 450,000. That 450,000, they're going to split 50-50 with their investors, and they're going to split their 50% with us, because we're the reason why somebody wants to buy the land for $2 million, because we're going to pay rent for $130,000. I know I was talking fast. You can slow it down. You can back it up, and you can watch it again. That is how money is created in this particular scenario. And this is how, when we go with private equity, we don't have to use all of our money. Remember, when we used our money, our savings, wife and I's savings, I'm aggressive, pull from my 401k. I feel like I can control my 401k and make more money. I've probably pulled, if I never touched my 401k in all my years working corporate, I think there'd be about 300,000 in there. I've pulled so many times because I just believe differently in that space. And I'm not alone, but 401k, that's a whole nother topic. But you could spend like a career and have $2 million in a 401k. You're 65 years old. I don't think you can live off of $2 million. That 300,000 I've pulled, I've pulled it to buy real estate, and equity has increased. And now I'm pulling it for a business that's on one store, is gonna make me $200,000 in net operating income. Make our team, it's not me, it's our team, 200,000 plus in income. I just feel like there's a better return. It's aggressive, it's dangerous. I don't advise it for everybody. It just works for me. So anyways, but when you're using your own money, you're using your own money. It's finite in a lot of ways. When you use another capital, there's more to it. Remember, Don Peebles said 69 trillion, not billion, 69 trillion was circulated in the private equity space in 2021. 98% of that went to white men. We need to play more in the private equity space. Just people like green, so you can partner and make money together. Just got to know how to enter the space, what the language that is spoken in that space, and learn how to navigate. Just like there's a language for insurance, there's a language for commercial banking, there's a language for private equity. And we as a people, we always find a way to thrive, even when all the odds are stacked against us. So why don't we just thrive in this space too? Private equity space. All right, so we talked about private equity, talk about scaling. You need to scale. That means you need other capital to grow faster. That's what all these institutions, when people go public, when they take their company and they go public, they're doing it to scale. They had a group of investors put the money in together, and now said, let's get some public money because we want to scale. And that's what we're talking about. So you have personal capital, you have bank debt, and you have private equity. So back to the bank debt with the SBA is to bridge some of that, is to incentivize banks. Hey, give money to Obi's startup. If the SBA didn't exist, and I just said, hey, I'm 41 years old. My wife is 40 years old. Fred's probably in his 40s too. Hey, we're going to start a coffee business. And you're like, yeah, what's your experience? Well, my wife's a psychiatrist. She was in school, all through the 2000s to become a psychiatrist. And now she's been working basically since 2011, 2012 as a psychiatrist in that space. I've been a banker for, my working career, and a teacher. I was a banker, a teacher, and a coach. And Fred is an engineer. With that being said, where's the coffee experience? Yeah, we don't have any coffee experience, but we're partnering with a company, an organization that does a great job teaching their franchisees how to run the business. It's not that complicated. And like, yeah, so we'll pass, but then the SBA comes and says, well, we'll insure 75% of that if it's SBA 7A, or we will put in 35, 40% of the capital. And all the bank says, oh, I just got to do 50%. Obi, Fred, and Danielle, they're strong sponsors. We can get with that. So that's why the SBA is there. There's a conventional route, there's the SBA route, there's, using bank debt is cheaper than selling shares of your company. But sometimes selling shares of your company is the best way to grow faster, to scale. Today is the days of definition. So again, let's recap SBA 504 versus SBA 7A. SBA 504, there has to be real estate or equipment involved. They won't do it without real estate or equipment. The SBA 504 is unlike the 7A, where they insure the potential defaults up to 75%. 504, actual capital is injected. Where's the capital coming from? Well, there's certified development corporations that are licensed, they're approved to underwrite on behalf of the SBA, and then they collect local bond money from the local economy, and they inject it into these projects. So our team has been fully approved at the CDC, or the Certified Development level. What that means is we met with our particular banker, which is a guy named Frank, partners with our actual bank, guy named Bryson, and he saw a credit opportunity and thought it was worthy enough to submit to his underwriting team and therefore their local loan committee. The loan committee typically is comprised of the leaders of the organization on the credit risk side who say, based on our knowledge and our comfort level with this project, we approve or we decline the project. The loan committee approved our project. They felt comfortable enough with Scooters as a corporation. They felt comfortable enough with Fred, my wife, and I as sponsors. They felt comfortable enough with what our financial picture looks like, and they said, hey, we approve. That gives, because they're certified by the SBA, that gives the SBA confidence that, hey, they looked at a deal, they want to do this deal, they're going to raise the capital from their development area. Okay, we can get with that deal most likely too, but you still got to check a bunch of boxes. So that's the SBA, the 504 side. At this point, that approved by the credit committee package is sent to the SBA from a federal level. We actually get an SBA number. Now we have a loan number, and they're going to finish their underwriting. They're still going to check, hey, I know you guys are certified by us. However, we need to make sure that everything that we expect to be in this credit package is in this credit package. If they have questions, they're going to ask. They'll send it back to the CDC. Answer these questions, or else we won't approve. So at this point, they're in the SBA federal level approving process. We get past that, we get an approval, and then we can start. Now the bank is confident. We know that the SBA has given their letter, their commitment, for lack of a better term. So we know that we're only on the hook for 50% of this transaction. Obi, Fred, and Danielle and their investment team is on the hook for 15% equity injection, and then the SBA is going to come back and give us 35%. They've given us a commitment at this point. SBA 7A. So you'll see the term that there is banks can have they can be a approved SBA lender. That means they know how to underwrite SBA. They probably have some people on their team with experience underwriting SBA transactions. And a 7A allows for a little bit more generic transactions. You know, in the SBA process, I've seen the SBA Express. Those are smaller transactions, typically $350,000 or less. Then there's a VA SBA component, and then there's a 7A component. On the 7A, it allows for all types of transactions, whether we call them commercial and industry transactions, it could be quick service restaurant transaction, but you don't necessarily have to have equipment and real estate in the 7A. You can have it, but you don't have to have it. But on the 7A, it is underwritten completely at the approved or the qualified lender, somebody that knows how to write SBA, and SBA said, we know this group knows how to underwrite. So if they follow our guidelines, they, for lack of a better term, check all the boxes, since we know they know how to do it, we're going to approve it. But they'll check later and say, hey, you need to make sure you checked all the boxes correctly. That's the only way to ensure that we will ensure the default at a 75% clip, the potential default. So on a 7A transaction, unlike the CDC, who actually raises capital and are involved in the equity injection, they really don't put up any money. What they do is they ensure default. So if you have a loan transaction that's $1 million, the bank is doing the $1 million, but the bank is doing the $1 million with the confidence that if you don't pay, if you default, and you default on the entire $1 million, they're gonna get $750,000 from the SBA to cover some of those losses, most of those losses. That's why they feel confident doing it. But for them to do that, they have to partner with somebody that knows how to write to their standards. So they don't partner with every old bank. And this was the argument that one company we used said, hey, we don't know that your bank knows how to properly underwrite the SBA 7A, and if we mess up throughout the process, we won't have our insurance on the back end. That was what was being argued in that case. It's worked out for us that we've got a partnership that is more cohesive and connective. What do I mean by that? We're developing a relationship with Frank at Capital CDC. Frank already has a developed relationship with our bank, First Capital Bank of Texas. So with that, there's a level of accountability and, hey, I want to do right by you because we have a relationship that exists more cohesively in this scenario than the scenarios we were working with before. So now you know the difference, hopefully, between a SBA 504 and an SBA 7A. We've talked about different types of capital, your personal capital. We talked about private equity and why that's important in scaling. We've talked heavily about the SBA. We haven't spent much time on conventional space because, quite honestly, for a lot of you entrepreneurs who are in the beginning phases, conventional pricing is pretty expensive. Usually that's reserved for more experienced and established businesses. We're going to talk about that down the road, but I wanted to focus this experience on, hey, you're the entrepreneur like us, like in the midlife crisis, and you want to do something new, something for yourself. How do you get started doing it? That's what I want to focus on, and my prayer is that that was communicated in this interaction. So, Space and Equity, we're all about increasing assets and creating new space. We're all about making sure our daughter gets to the Junior Olympics and competes to the best of her ability. We're all about arguing with my 16-year-old on female leadership and sometimes put my foot in my mouth and then trumping her and say, well, I'm the dad and this is what I say. And instead of staying with the argument, flipping the script. I love communicating with you guys on this channel. Hey, like and subscribe. Check out our website. We've got a lot of information. We can provide consulting as well. When you come correct, they can't stop.